The moment I stepped into that hotel ballroom, I knew my life would never be the same. But I had no idea the gift I left behind would tear my sister's world apart. My name is Elena Vance, and I was 28 years old when I flew from San Francisco to Chicago for my sister Sophia's elaborate society wedding. It was supposed to be a weekend of celebration, of family, of finally being acknowledged. I had spent weeks convincing myself that this time would be different. This time, surely, they would see me. When I arrived at the historic Drake Hotel, a landmark of old money and prestige, my heart was pounding with a mixture of hope and anxiety. I smoothed down my navy blue dress, the one I had bought specifically for this occasion, and walked toward the reception desk. The lobby was a masterpiece of crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and towering floral arrangements that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. A string quartet played softly near the entrance, their music floating through the air like perfume. Two young women in black blazers sat behind a long table. A guest list the size of a small novel spread out before them. I approached with what I hoped was a confident smile. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm here for the Ashford Vance wedding." The woman on the left looked up with a professional, polished smile. "Of course. Name, please, Elena Vance. I'm the bride's sister." Her smile remained fixed, but something flickered in her eyes. She looked down at the list, her finger tracing the names. She flipped a page, then another. The smile began to fade. The woman on the right leaned over to help, scanning the pages with growing concern. They exchanged a glance, one of those silent communications that happens between coworkers when something is wrong. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the first woman said, her voice now tentative. "I don't see your name on the list. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Could you check again?" "Vance. I'm the bride's sister. There must be a mistake." She flipped through several more pages, her movements becoming more frantic. The other woman checked a different section. "There's a Harold Vance," she said slowly, "a Patricia Vance, a Sophia Vance, soon to be Ashford." She looked up at me with something that looked painfully like pity. "No Elena." I stood there, frozen, as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Behind them, through the open ballroom doors, I could see the wedding reception in full swing. White tablecloths, towering centerpieces, hundreds of guests in designer gowns and tailored suits, laughing and drinking champagne. 400 guests, and every single one of them had been deemed more worthy of an invitation than me, the bride's own sister. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. My fingers felt numb as I scrolled through my contacts and found Sophia's name. I pressed the call button and listened to it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice sharp and impatient. "Hello?" Behind her, I could hear the buzz of the cocktail hour. Glasses clinking, music playing, people laughing. "Sophia, it's Elena. I'm at the hotel. My name isn't on the guest list." There was a pause. A breath of silence that seemed to stretch for an eternity. Then she spoke, and her voice was dripping with a cruel amusement I knew all too well. "I know," she said slowly. "That's because you weren't invited." Even though a part of me had expected it, the words still landed like a physical blow. "I'm your sister," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You really thought you'd be on the guest list?" She sneered. "Seriously? This wedding is for people who matter, Elena, important people, not someone who takes pictures of strangers for a living. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love you most pretend you don't exist? How long do you let them make you feel invisible?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. "I flew across the country for this," I said quietly. "That's your problem, not mine," she snapped. "I didn't ask you to come. I didn't want you here." Nobody wants you here, Elena. Not Mom, not Dad, and definitely not me. You've always been an embarrassment to this family. Go home. Go back to your little life in California and stop pretending you belong in mine." I stood in that grand lobby surrounded by strangers, letting her words wash over me. I could have fought back. I could have yelled, cried, begged, or screamed. But I didn't. I had learned long ago that fighting for their love was a losing battle. Instead, I said the only thing I could: "I understand. I'll leave your gift at the reception table." "Fine, whatever," she said dismissively. "Just don't cause a scene." She hung up without another word. I stared at my phone for a long moment, feeling the weight of 28 years of rejection pressing down on me. But then, slowly, something shifted inside me. A quiet resolve began to form, a determination I hadn't felt in years. I knew exactly what was in that small silver box I had brought, and I knew exactly what would happen when she opened it. To understand why that single, modest gift could dismantle everything my sister had built, I have to take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a sprawling, picture-perfect house in the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago, one of those grand old mansions that looked like it belonged on a postcard. From the outside, we were the ideal family, wealthy, prominent, philanthropic. My father was a corporate attorney who worked with some of the most powerful firms in the country. My mother chaired several prestigious charity boards. We attended the right churches, donated to the right causes, and were photographed at all the right events. But inside those elegant walls, there was a different story. There were 2 daughters, and it was painfully clear that only one of them truly mattered. Sophia was 3 years older than me, and she was the golden child in every sense of the word. She had the bigger bedroom, the designer clothes, the private piano lessons, and the dance recitals that my parents actually attended. She was showered with attention, praise, and opportunity. I, on the other hand, lived on the periphery. I got the hand-me-downs, the quiet nods, and the empty promises. I was the one they remembered only when they needed something and forgot the rest of the time. My 10th birthday was the day I finally understood my place in this family hierarchy. I had been counting down the days for weeks, my young heart full of excitement for what double digits would bring. Double digits felt important, like a milestone that deserved to be celebrated. I imagined balloons, a cake with my name on it, and maybe even a party like Sophia had gotten the year before, the one with the pony and the gourmet catering and 40 kids from her exclusive private school. I had even picked out a dress for the occasion, a pink one with little white flowers that I had been saving for months. That morning, I woke up early, my heart racing with anticipation. I ran downstairs in my pajamas, ready to see what surprises awaited me. The kitchen was quiet, too quiet. My mother was on the phone, her voice animated as she discussed the floral arrangements for an upcoming gala that Sophia was being honored at. My father had already left for work, his coffee cup still sitting in the sink. Neither of them looked up when I walked in. "Mom," I said, my voice small and hopeful. "It's my birthday." She held up a hand, not even turning to look at me. "I know, honey," she said distractedly. "We'll do something special later." I stood there for a moment, waiting for something more. A hug, a smile, a sign that this day mattered. But she had already turned back to her conversation, her attention completely absorbed by whatever Sophia was doing. The later never came. That day passed like any other. No cake, no party, no celebration. Just the quiet realization that I was invisible. But that evening, just as I was beginning to accept that my birthday had come and gone without anyone noticing, there was a soft knock at my bedroom door. It was my grandmother, my father's mother, a woman named Beatrice. She was the only one who ever seemed to remember I existed. the only one who looked at me like I mattered. She sat on the edge of my bed, her face soft and kind, her eyes crinkling at the corners with warmth. In her hands was a small, beautifully wrapped box. "Happy birthday, my darling," she whispered, pressing the box into my hands. I unwrapped it carefully, savoring the moment. Inside was a camera, not a toy, but a real professional-grade film camera. It was heavy and metallic, with a leather strap and a silver body that felt solid and important in my small hands. "You have a gift for seeing the world in a way others miss," she said softly. "Never lose that. One day, the world will see what I see in you." I didn't know it then, but that camera would become my salvation, my voice, my way of carving out a place in a world that kept trying to erase me. And my grandmother, she knew exactly what she was planting in my heart that day. She knew that the quiet ones, the ones who observe rather than demand attention, often hold the most depth. She was giving me a tool, a weapon, a lifeline, and I would use it to build something remarkable. Years later, I graduated high school as valedictorian, top of my class. I had a full scholarship to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, one of the most prestigious art and design programs in the country. I thought, just maybe, this would finally make me matter. My name would be in the program, printed in elegant font. I was giving a speech about following your passion, about staying true to your dreams. Surely, they would be there, front and center, with proud smiles and camera flashes. The morning of my graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown, my speech notes clutched in my hand. The sun was shining outside, a beautiful Saturday afternoon that felt full of promise. My parents were huddled over my father's laptop, their heads bent together in serious conversation. My sister was at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with a bored expression. "The ceremony starts at 2, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We should leave by 1 to get good seats." My mother waved a dismissive hand without looking up. "Something came up, Elena." I felt a chill run down my spine. What could possibly be more important than my graduation? My father finally looked at me, his expression flat and unreadable. "Sophia has a meeting with a key advisor at a major venture capital firm," he said. "It's a critical opportunity for her career. We can't miss it." I stood there in my graduation gown, clutching my carefully practiced speech, feeling the weight of their indifference pressing down on me. "It's my graduation," I said, the words barely escaping my throat. "A photography degree isn't a real career, Elena," he said flatly. "Maybe you should think about business school, like your sister. Something practical. Something that will actually lead to a real job." Sophia smirked, but said nothing. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any words. I walked to that ceremony alone. I sat in a sea of students, surrounded by classmates whose families cheered for them, whose parents took pictures and cried with pride. I gave my speech to a room full of supportive professors and classmates, and when they called my name to receive my diploma, I looked out into the audience. There was only one familiar face, my grandmother, Beatrice, sitting in the front row, clapping louder than anyone. After the ceremony, she found me in the crowd. She took my hands in hers, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Remember, sweetheart," she said softly, "the things people overlook are often the things that hold the most value. The world will try to make you feel small, but never let them. Your worth is not determined by their attention." I didn't fully understand what she meant then, not really, but I would. Years later, standing outside my sister's wedding with a small silver box in my hands, I would understand everything. After graduation, I didn't wait around for my family to notice me. I packed 2 suitcases, sold most of my belongings, and bought a one-way ticket to San Francisco. I didn't say goodbye to my family. There was nothing left to say. I didn't even tell them I was leaving. I just vanished, like a ghost fading into the morning light. For the next decade, I built a life for myself in silence. I started as an assistant to a high-end event photographer, a grueling job that involved carrying heavy equipment, adjusting lighting, and running errands for demanding clients. I worked 12-hour days, sometimes more, learning everything I could about the craft. I studied composition, lighting, editing, and business management. I saved every penny I could, living in a tiny studio apartment with barely enough room to turn around. And slowly, client by client, I built my own freelance business from the ground up. Have you ever worked so hard at something that no one even knew you were doing it? My family never asked about my life. Not once. To them. I was still the quiet daughter who took pictures of strangers at weddings and parties, a harmless hobbyist who would eventually come to her senses and get a real job. Sophia would call occasionally, but it was never to see how I was doing. It was always a one-sided performance of her achievements, a new promotion, a new luxury car, a new high-powered boyfriend. I was just her audience, someone to listen to her brag. "You're still doing those little photo shoots?" she'd ask, her voice dripping with condescension as she described her latest multi-million-dollar deal. "I just closed a 7-figure campaign," she would say. "What about you? Still carrying cameras for other people?" And I would listen, letting her talk, never correcting her assumptions. At the time of that last call, I was sitting in my own office, a bright, airy space with panoramic views of the San Francisco Bay. On my wall were framed features from major magazines and letters of commendation from A-list celebrities. My company, Lucent Light Studios, had generated over $4 million in revenue the previous year. I had a team of 15 people and a waiting list of clients so long that I had to turn people away. Celebrity weddings, corporate galas, magazine covers. I had built an empire, all in silence while my family had no idea. Sophia knew none of this. To her, I was still just her invisible, irrelevant sister, someone to be dismissed and forgotten. I let her believe that. I didn't need her approval anymore, or so I told myself. Then, a year ago, everything changed with a single phone call. It was a Tuesday morning, a day that started like any other. I was reviewing contracts at my desk, sipping my coffee, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Chicago number I didn't recognize, a firm called Pearson, Hartwell, and Associates. I answered, my heart already beginning to race with a strange sense of foreboding. "Miss Vance," a man's voice said, professional and measured. "This is Andrew Pearson, your grandmother's attorney. I'm sorry to inform you that Beatrice Hartwell passed away last night." The world stopped. My grandmother was 84, and I knew she was slowing down. But I had always convinced myself there would be more time. One more visit, one more phone call, one more chance to tell her how much she meant to me. I flew back to Chicago that same day, my mind reeling with grief and memories. The funeral was a grand affair, held at the Fourth Presbyterian Church on Michigan Avenue, a stunning stone building that had stood for over a century. It was filled with hundreds of people, a testament to the impact my grandmother had made on the world. Beatrice Hartwell had been a legendary patron of the arts, a woman who funded museums, scholarships, and young artists. I sat in the third row, alone, while my parents and sister sat in the front, the picture of a grieving family. But I noticed something. Between the moments of quiet mourning, Sophia and my mother were whispering, their heads bent together in urgent conversation. I caught fragments of what they were saying, phrases that made my blood run cold. The estate hearing, the jewelry collection, they weren't mourning a woman. They were calculating an inheritance. They were already dividing up the spoils. After the service, as the crowd slowly dispersed, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. It was Mr. Pearson, the lawyer, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. "Miss Vance," he said quietly, "there's something your grandmother wanted you to have. Could you stay for a moment?" My heart began to pound. I nodded, unable to speak. He led me to a small study at the back of the church, a quiet room lined with bookshelves and smelling of old paper. He closed the door, sat across from me, and slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were 2 documents and a letter. The first document was a notarized amendment to her will, stamped with legal seals and signatures. I read the words 3 times before they finally sank in. The Hartwell estate, which included her personal collection of antique jewelry valued at over $2.5 million, was being left to me. Not to Sophia, not to my mother, to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter, recognizing my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Elena," it began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone. But I need you to understand why I have made this choice. Your sister sees these pieces as trophies, status symbols to be displayed and envied. But you, my darling, you see their history, their craft, their soul. You understand that true beauty isn't about ownership. It's about preservation and respect. Your mother and sister will be angry. They will claim I was confused, that I wasn't in my right mind. But I know the truth. I have watched you grow into someone remarkable, even when no one else was watching. You have built a life of meaning and purpose. These treasures belong with someone who will honor their legacy. They belong with you. All my love, Grandma Beatrice." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know then that I would soon be holding this secret, waiting for the right moment to use it. I didn't know that my grandmother had, in her wisdom, given me the greatest gift of all. Not just the jewelry, but the truth about who we really were and who we had become. Some secrets aren't weapons. Sometimes they're truths that just demand to be seen. Months after the funeral, I learned that Sophia was engaged. Her fiancé, a man named Julian Ashford, was old money from the East Coast, the kind of family that had owned half of Connecticut for generations. Their wedding was going to be the social event of the season, an opulent affair at the Drake Hotel that would cost more than most people would see in a lifetime. 400 guests, a 6-figure budget, live orchestra, extravagant floral installations, every detail planned to perfection. I waited for my invitation. Weeks passed. Nothing. I checked my email, my mailbox, my spam folder. I checked the mail every day, hoping to see an envelope with my name on it. I told myself there must be a delay, that surely my own sister wouldn't exclude me from the most important day of her life. Finally, I called my mother. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I haven't received an invitation to Sophia's wedding. Should I just RSVP directly to her?" There was a long, uncomfortable silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. "Elena," my mother said, her voice careful and measured, "Sophia wanted me to talk to you about that." I felt my stomach drop. "The wedding is very intimate," she continued. "She felt it would be better if you didn't attend." "Intimate?" I said, almost laughing. "I saw the planning site, Mom. There are 400 guests. 400. Another pause, longer this time. "You know how you can be at these events, Elena. It can be awkward. We just don't want any distractions. We want Sophia's day to be perfect." I sat in silence, my phone pressed to my ear, feeling the familiar weight of their rejection settle over me. "I see," I said finally, my voice flat and hollow. "Thank you for letting me know, Mom." I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Then I scrolled through Sophia's social media, photos of her dress fittings, a custom creation by a famous designer, Photos of her bachelorette party in Cabo, a week of luxury and excess. Photos of her engagement party, her registry at Cartier, her wedding website. 400 guests, but not a single place setting for me. Not a single seat at the table for my own sister. I stared at my phone for a long time, feeling the anger rise in my chest. And then I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. What would you do if your own family erased your existence from the most important day of their lives? I booked a one-way flight to Chicago 3 days before the wedding. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask permission. I simply packed a small bag and prepared the one thing I needed to bring, the documents from my grandmother. I placed the letter, the notarized will, and a picture of my grandmother and me in a small silver box. I tied it with a white ribbon, making sure everything was perfect. The night before the flight, I couldn't sleep. I kept asking myself if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to protect myself from more rejection, to stay home and pretend I didn't care. But the bigger part of me was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being treated like a ghost in my own family. I wasn't flying to Chicago to cause a scene. I wasn't going to ruin her day. I just wanted to do one thing. I wanted to be seen. Just once, I wanted to leave a gift that spoke a truth my family had refused to hear for nearly 30 years. At the Drake Hotel, I walked past the chandeliers and marble floors to the reception table. The two women there were polite and professional, dressed in black blazers with perfect posture. When I gave my name, their smiles froze. They searched the list. "Nothing, I'm so sorry, ma'am," one said, her eyes full of genuine sympathy. "Is there someone I can call for you?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "That's okay. I'll just leave this." I walked to the gift table, which was a masterpiece of excess. Hundreds of wrapped boxes, Tiffany blue, Hermes orange, glossy white with golden bows, crystal decanters, silver frames, envelopes thick with checks. I found an empty spot near the edge and set my silver box down. It looked small and humble among all the grandeur, easy to overlook, easy to ignore. I tucked a small card under the ribbon to Sophia from your sister Elena. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I walked through the lobby, past the string quartet and the beautiful people in their beautiful clothes. I walked out into the autumn air, crisp and clean, and I didn't look back. I didn't know what would happen when Sophia opened that box. I didn't know if it would change anything or nothing at all. But I knew I couldn't keep carrying this secret forever. Some truths need to come out. And my grandmother had trusted me to find the right moment. Hours later, as I sat alone in an airport lounge waiting for my return flight to San Francisco, the messages started flooding my phone. The first one was a text from Sophia, just a question mark, then another, then a string of them. "Elena, answer me. What is this? You ruined everything." My mother called, then my father, then Sophia again, over and over. I looked at the screen, at the 47 missed calls and 32 frantic text messages. I didn't answer. I let them all go to voicemail and silenced my phone. But I also didn't know that the ruin had already started. Let me tell you what was happening back at the hotel. During the cocktail hour, Sophia had been basking in the spotlight. Glowing with the attention of 400 guests, she was wearing a custom Vera Wang gown, diamonds sparkling at her throat and wrists. She had been bragging to anyone who would listen about inheriting the Hartwell collection. The collection worth millions. She described the pieces in detail. The pearls from the 1920s, the Art Deco diamond earrings, the sapphire brooch that had once belonged to a duchess. She showed pictures of the custom display case she had commissioned for her dressing room. Everyone assumed it was hers. Everyone believed the lie. Then, during the formal dinner, the MC announced that the bride and groom would open a few gifts before the cake cutting. It was a moment of performative generosity, a chance for Sophia to show off her haul. She floated toward the gift table like a queen approaching her throne, picking up boxes and announcing their contents to the crowd. A crystal vase from Baccarat, a set of sterling silver candlesticks. Then her hand landed on the small silver box, the one with the white ribbon. "Oh, look," she announced, her voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "A gift from my sister, the one who couldn't even afford to show up properly." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Julian, her fiancé, frowned slightly. "Let's see what she got us," he said, trying to keep the mood light. "Probably a homemade photo album or one of her little photographs," Sophia laughed, untying the ribbon with a flourish. She lifted the lid. Inside was an envelope, thick and official-looking. Her smile flickered. She pulled out the documents, unfolding them slowly. The first was the notarized amendment to the will, covered in stamps and signatures. The second was my grandmother's handwritten letter. The third was a photograph of my grandmother and me, standing outside her favorite jewelry shop. Sophia's eyes scanned the legal document. Her face went white, then red, then white again. "What is it?" Julian asked, leaning over. Sophia didn't answer. Her hands were trembling. The letter slipped from her fingers and drifted to the floor. At a nearby table, my mother noticed something was wrong. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "Sophia, sweetheart, what is it?" Sophia looked up from the papers, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "This can't be real," she whispered. "This can't be real. Grandma loved me. She would never," she stopped, unable to finish the sentence. 400 guests stared at her in complete silence. Then, at the bottom of that silver box, there was one more piece of paper she hadn't unfolded yet. My mother reached the head table in seconds. "What is it? What's wrong?" Sophia thrust the papers at her with shaking hands. My mother's eyes scanned the document, reading the words that declared the Hartwell collection the sole property of Elena Vance. The color drained from her face. "This has to be a mistake," my mother said, her voice unsteady. "It's not a mistake," Sophia cried, her voice cracking. "It's dated 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Before Grandma even got sick. She knew what she was doing." Whispers began to ripple through the ballroom. The guests closest to the head table had seen enough. The bride's stricken expression, the papers trembling in her hands. "Isn't that the jewelry she was telling us about earlier?" Someone murmured. "The $2 million collection?" She said it was hers. Sophia heard them. Her face twisted with a mixture of rage and humiliation. "This is fake," she announced, holding up the papers like evidence of a crime. "My sister forged this. She's always been jealous of me. She's always tried to tear me down." My father appeared beside my mother, his expression grim. "Let me see that." He read the document, his jaw tightening. Then he picked up the letter from the floor. He read my grandmother's words. "Victoria sees these pieces as trophies. Elena sees them as memories. I know who will honor my legacy." His jaw tightened. He knew his mother's handwriting. He recognized her signature. He understood, perhaps for the first time, what Beatrice had seen in both her granddaughters and what she had chosen. "This can't be happening," Sophia shrieked. "Not today. Not at my wedding. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life." She snatched the letter back, tears streaming down her face, mascara streaking her cheeks. Julian, her fiancé, stood frozen beside her, watching his perfect bride unravel in front of 400 witnesses. He looked lost, confused, like a man who was just beginning to realize he didn't know his fiancé at all. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through Sophia's sobs. He was staring at the silver box. "There's something else in there." Sophia looked down. At the bottom of the box, half hidden by tissue paper, was another folded document. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was a contract, a photography contract. The header read, Lucent Light Studios Wedding Services Agreement. Sophia's eyes dropped to the signature page. Client, Sophia Vance. Owner-proprietor, Elena Vance. Amount paid, $25,000. Non-refundable. She stared at it, her mouth hanging open. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Julian took the paper from her, his eyes widening as he read. You hired her company, he said slowly. You told me your sister was a failure. You told me she was struggling, that she couldn't hold down a job, that your family had to support her. I didn't know, Sophia said, her voice trembling. I didn't know. Julian's face was cold. Where's the photographer? Sophia spun around wildly. Where's the photographer? A young woman with a camera stepped forward nervously from the corner where the photography team had been working all evening. I'm sorry, ma'am, she said, her voice soft. I'm the lead photographer, Ms. Vance. Elena Vance is the owner, but she doesn't typically attend shoots in person. She has a team that handles the work. You work for her? Julian asked. The photographer nodded carefully. Yes, sir. Lucent Light Studios has photographed over 300 weddings. We're one of the top firms in the country. We've been featured in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and several other major publications. The ballroom was completely silent now. 400 guests, every single one watching Sophia's carefully constructed world crumble in real time. Someone at a nearby table pulled out their phone and started recording. Did she say $2 million? Someone else whispered. And the sister owns a photography company? The one Sophia's been calling a failure? She told everyone her sister was a loser, another voice added. She said her sister was mentally unstable, that she had issues, and now she finds out her sister is a millionaire who owns one of the top photography companies in the country. Julian was still holding the contract, his face unreadable. Sophia, he said quietly, his voice barely containing his anger. What else have you lied about? Sophia couldn't answer. She was too busy reaching for her phone. She needed to call me. She needed to scream at someone. She needed to fix this. But some things can't be fixed. Just then, a woman stepped forward from the crowd. It was Caroline Ashford, the wedding planner, an elegant woman in her 60s who had orchestrated every detail of this perfect day. She walked toward the head table with the calm authority of someone who had seen it all. If I may, she said. The room quieted. Caroline took the legal document from Sophia's trembling hands and examined it briefly. This is authentic, she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. I witnessed Beatrice Hartwell sign this amendment 2 years ago. I was present when she discussed her wishes with her attorney. I saw her sign it. I saw her initial every page. There is no doubt this is legally binding. My mother stepped forward, her face pale. Caroline, you can't possibly. I can, Patricia, Caroline said gently. Beatrice was my dearest friend for 40 years. She told me exactly why she made this choice. She said Victoria sees jewelry as trophies. Elena sees them as memories. She said Elena was the only one who ever loved her for who she was, not what she owned. Have you ever been so wrong about someone that it shattered everything you thought you knew? The words hung in the air like a verdict. At a table near the back, someone was definitely filming on their phone now. She also said something else, Caroline continued, folding her hands. She said Elena never asked her for anything. Sophia never stopped asking. That mattered to her. It mattered more than you'll ever know. Sophia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in her life, my sister had absolutely nothing to say, and 400 witnesses had heard every word. Then another voice spoke up from the back of the room. A man in his 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. Richard Pennington, CEO of Pennington Media Group, one of Julian's father's oldest friends. "I know Elena Vance," he announced. "She photographed my daughter's wedding last year in Malibu. 600 guests. She was absolutely brilliant." The photographs were works of art. A murmur swept through the room. "Wait." A woman at another table raised her hand. "Elena Vance, as in Lucent Light Studios? They shot our foundation gala. They're legendary. They've been featured in Vogue. Everyone wants them." More guests began to speak up. "They photographed the Whitmore ceremony. I heard they're booked 2 years in advance. A friend told me she's turned down celebrity weddings because her schedule is full." Sophia's face was a mask of disbelief. "That's impossible," she stammered. "Elena is. She takes pictures of strangers. She's nobody. She's always been nobody." "Actually," Richard Pennington said, not unkindly, "she's quite successful. Her company did over $4 million in revenue last year. She's one of the most sought-after photographers on the West Coast. She has a waiting list of A-list clients. She's been featured in every major publication you can name." My mother grabbed the back of a chair, her face ashen. "4 million," she whispered. She looked like she might faint. My father stood very still, his face unreadable. But I knew that expression. He was calculating, re-evaluating, realizing just how wrong he had been for all these years. He was realizing that the daughter he had dismissed, the daughter he had called a failure, had built an empire without any help from him. "She never said anything," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Why would she?" Richard Pennington replied, "From what I understand, your family wasn't particularly interested in listening to her. She learned a long time ago that talking to you was pointless." Sophia spun toward Julian, desperation in her eyes. "This doesn't change anything," she cried. "She's still trying to ruin my day. She's still trying to destroy me. This is all her fault." Julian's voice was cold and flat in a way no one had ever heard before. "Stop talking," he said. His bride fell silent, and in that silence, the truth settled over the room like dust after an explosion. The fairy tale was over. The illusion was shattered. 3,000 miles away, my phone began to ring. I was still in the airport lounge nursing my second coffee, watching the last light fade from the Chicago skyline. My screen lit up with Sophia's name. I let it ring. She called again, and again, and again. 5 times, 10 times, 15. Then my mother's name appeared. Then my father's. The messages started flooding in. "Sophia, pick up the phone right now. Sophia, you ruined everything. Sophia, how could you do this to me? Mom, Elena, call me immediately. We need to talk. Dad, this is unacceptable. You will explain yourself. Sophia, I will never forgive you for this. Sophia, the whole room is staring at me. Sophia, what was in that box? What did you do?" I watched the notifications pile up, the screen glowing with their rage, their desperation, their demands. 47 missed calls by the time I finished my coffee. I silenced my phone and slipped it into my bag. A gate agent announced that my flight to San Francisco was now boarding. I gathered my things and walked toward the departure gate, past families reuniting, past couples saying goodbye, past business travelers typing on their laptops. Nobody in that airport knew what had just happened in a ballroom across the city. Nobody knew that a family was fracturing in real time. Nobody knew that a bride was crying in front of 400 guests. Nobody knew that a truth hidden for years had finally clawed its way into the light. I handed my boarding pass to the agent and walked down the jetway. But just before I turned off my phone, one more message arrived, not from Sophia, not from my parents, from Julian. And what he said made me pause. "Elena, this is Julian Ashford. I'm sorry to contact you like this. I got your number from the Lucent-like contract. I stood in the airplane doorway, passengers streaming past me, and read his words. I need to understand what happened tonight. Sophia is inconsolable, but she won't explain anything. She just keeps saying you betrayed her. Another message appeared. She told me you were mentally unstable, that you had severe issues and couldn't hold down a job. She told me your family had to cut you off for your own good. My chest tightened. I believed her. I never questioned it. I never tried to meet you or hear your side. I'm realizing now that was a terrible mistake. A flight attendant touched my arm. "Ma'am, we need you to take your seat." I nodded and walked to my row, still reading. The reception ended early. Half the guests left after Caroline spoke. Your parents are asking questions I don't have answers to. I don't know what to believe anymore. I buckled my seatbelt as the final message came through. I'm not asking you to explain yourself. You don't owe me anything. But I wanted you to know I'm sorry for whatever part I played in this. I'm sorry for believing her without question. I'm sorry for not seeing the truth. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Thank you for reaching out, Julian. I have no ill feelings toward you. Whatever you decide about your relationship, I hope you find clarity." His reply came almost instantly. "The wedding's over, but I don't know if the marriage will be. I need time to think about everything." I turned off my phone as the plane pushed back from the gate. Time, that was the one thing none of us could get back. The flight back to San Francisco was quiet. I sat in my window seat, watching the lights of Chicago shrink below me, thinking about Julian's message, about Sophia's screams frozen in text, about my parents' demands that I explain myself. The thing is, I didn't have anything to explain. I hadn't forged those documents. I hadn't tricked Sophia into hiring my company. I hadn't done anything except deliver the truth that my grandmother had entrusted to me. The truth about the jewelry. The truth about who I had become. The truth that my family had refused to see for 28 years. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, I made a decision. I would not call Sophia back. I would not answer my parents' demands. I would not apologize or defend myself or beg to be understood. For my entire life, I had accepted their dismissal. I had made myself small. I had hoped that if I was quiet enough, good enough, successful enough, they would finally notice me. But I was done hoping. As the plane crossed over the Rocky Mountains, I wrote a note on my phone. Not a message to send. Just words for myself. I won't close the door on them, but I won't hold it open forever either. They have to choose to walk through. That was my new boundary. If Sophia wanted to apologize, truly apologize, I would listen. If my parents wanted to know me, truly know me, I would give them a chance. But I would not chase them anymore. I would not perform my worth for people who had never bothered to look. The bravest thing you can do is know when to walk away. I put my phone away and closed my eyes. By the time we landed in San Francisco, the sun was rising over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. It felt like the beginning of something, or maybe the end. Either way, I was ready. I didn't find out about the video until the next morning. My assistant Jenna was waiting when I walked into the Lucent Light Studios office. She had her phone in her hand and an expression somewhere between amazement and concern. "Elena," she said, "you need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. A TikTok video already at 2 million views and climbing. The caption read, "Rich bride finds out her loser sister is actually a multi-millionaire." Someone at the wedding had been filming. The video showed Sophia at the head table, her face shifting from smug to confused to devastated as she read the documents. It captured Caroline's speech. It captured the guests murmuring. It captured Richard Pennington's revelation about my company. It captured Julian's cold command for Sophia to stop talking. The comments were endless. The quiet ones are always the ones you underestimate. Grandma knew exactly who deserved that jewelry. This is the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Sophia's whole life just got fact-checked in front of 400 people. The sister is a queen. She didn't even have to be there to destroy her. I scrolled through thousands of reactions, strangers who had never met me, cheering for a woman they only knew from a 30-second clip. "Your name is trending," Jenna said quietly. Lucent Light Studios got 300 inquiries overnight. People want to book us just because of this story. I sat down slowly. I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't filmed anything, posted anything, tried to go viral. I just wanted to be seen by my family. But now the whole world was watching. My phone buzzed. An email from a reporter at the Chicago Tribune. "Miss Vance, we'd love to interview you about the viral wedding video." I deleted it. "Cancel my meetings today," I told Jenna. "I need some time to think." Because this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. And I had a feeling my family would be showing up soon. 3 days later, my mother appeared. I was in my office reviewing proofs from a recent shoot when my receptionist buzzed. "Ms. Vance, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's your mother." I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering myself. Then I stood and walked to the lobby. Patricia Vance stood near the entrance, looking utterly out of place. She was dressed in her usual Chanel pearl earrings, silk blouse, perfectly coiffed hair. But her eyes were red-rimmed and uncertain. She stared at the reception desk, at the awards on the walls, at the framed magazine covers featuring Lucent Light Studios. "This is yours," she said when she saw me. "All of this?" "Yes, you never told us. You never asked." She flinched. I led her to my office and closed the door. She sat in the chair across from my desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "I came to talk about what happened," she said. "I assumed you ruined your sister's wedding." Her voice cracked. "How could you do that to her?" "I wasn't at the wedding, Mom," I said calmly. "I wasn't invited. Remember?" "You know what I mean," she said. "That stunt with the gift. That box. Those documents. You did that on purpose." I leaned back in my chair. I gave her the truth. "That's all. The documents are real. The will is legal. Everything in that box was authentic. I didn't forge anything. I didn't trick anyone. But why?" My mother cried. "Why humiliate her in front of everyone?" "I didn't humiliate her," I said. "She humiliated herself. She spent months bragging about jewelry that was never hers. She lied to her fiancé about me. She told everyone I was a failure. She banned me from her wedding. I didn't do any of that. She did." My mother's face crumpled. "Mom," I said, leaning forward, "I spent 28 years being invisible to this family. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm just asking for honesty. For the first time in my life, I want you to see me. Actually see me." She stared at me, her eyes wide. And then, for the first time in my life, my mother actually looked at me. Her gaze traveled slowly around my office, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown San Francisco, the awards displayed on the shelves, industry recognitions, magazine features, a framed letter from a senator thanking me for documenting his daughter's wedding, the photographs on the walls, each one a testament to a career built in silence. Her eyes landed on a picture of me with my grandmother taken at her 81st birthday. We were laughing, our heads tilted together, the picture of love. And then Patricia Vance began to cry. Not the delicate tears she produced at social events, real sobs, ugly and raw, shaking her whole body. "We failed you," she said between breaths. "I failed you. I failed you so completely. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her have the words." Sophia always demanded so much, she continued. She was loud about what she wanted, what she needed. And you were just quiet. You never complained. You never asked for anything. She wiped her face with trembling hands. "I thought that meant you were fine. I thought you didn't need us. The greatest treasures are often given in silence. I stopped needing you," I said quietly, "because I knew you wouldn't be there." She flinched like I had struck her. I thought she struggled to compose herself. I thought we were giving Sophia extra attention because she needed it more. But that wasn't true, was it? She needed it because we taught her to need it. And you stopped needing because we taught you not to hope. I said nothing. "Beatrice tried to tell me," my mother said, her voice barely a whisper. "She said I was losing you. She said you were slipping away and I didn't even notice. I didn't listen. I thought she was being dramatic. I thought she was just an old woman with old ideas." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Elena. I don't expect anything. But I needed you to know. I see it now. I see what I did. I see how we made you feel." I let the silence hold. Then I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Before she left, my mother told me about Sophia. "Julian postponed the honeymoon," she said, her voice hollow. "He's staying at his parents' house. He says he needs time to think about everything." "About whether he still wants to be married?" I asked. My mother nodded miserably. The video made things worse. "It's everywhere. 3 million views now. People at Sophia's company have seen it. Her boss called her in for a meeting. They asked her to take a leave of absence until the situation quiets down. I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. Not satisfaction. Not joy. Just heaviness. "There's more," my mother continued. "Julian's parents, the Ashfords, they called your father. They asked if there was anything else Sophia had lied about. Their old money. They care very much about reputation. And Sophia couldn't answer them. She tried. She said you had manipulated everything, that Grandma Beatrice wasn't in her right mind when she made the will." My mother laughed bitterly. "But Caroline Ashford is friends with the Ashfords. She told them the truth. She told them Beatrice was sharp as a tack until the very end. So Sophia had lost more than the jewelry. She had lost Julian's trust, his family's respect, her professional reputation, the perfect image she had spent her whole life constructing. She blames you," my mother said. "She says you destroyed her life on purpose." "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I just stopped pretending." My mother stood to leave, gathering her purse with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. "Beatrice always said you were the strongest of us all," she said, her voice cracking. "I think I finally understand what she meant." She walked out. I sat alone in my office for a long time after that, watching the sun sink toward the Pacific. Strong wasn't how I felt. But I wasn't broken either. That evening, I stayed late at the office. The building was quiet. Everyone else had gone home. I sat in my chair, looking out at the San Francisco skyline as it transformed from golden to pink to deep blue. On my desk was the photograph of my grandmother and me. I picked it up and studied her face. That knowing smile. Those kind eyes that had always seen me when no one else did. "Did you plan all this?" I asked the empty room. Of course, she didn't answer. But I could imagine what she would say. "I just planted seeds, darling. You're the one who grew." I thought about my family, about Sophia drowning in the consequences of her own making. about my mother finally opening her eyes after 28 years, about my father probably recalculating everything he thought he knew about his daughters. I didn't want to punish them forever. But I couldn't go back to being invisible either. I made a decision sitting there in the fading light. The door to reconciliation would not be locked. If Sophia genuinely apologized, not blamed me, not made excuses, but actually took responsibility, I would hear her out. If my parents wanted to know the real me, I would give them that chance. But I would not chase them. I would not perform for their approval. I would not make myself small to fit into the space they had assigned me. They would have to come to me as equals, or not at all. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to protect your own soul? I wrote it down in my journal. I won't close the door on them, but I won't hold it open forever either. They have to choose to walk through. That was my boundary. Clear, firm, unbreakable. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I deserved. And I wasn't willing to accept anything less. A week after my mother's visit, I went to the bank. The Hartwell collection was waiting for me in a private vault. 12 pieces of exquisite jewelry that had been in my grandmother's family for generations. Pearl necklaces from the 1920s. Art Deco diamond earrings. A sapphire brooch that had once belonged to a duchess. I held each piece carefully, thinking about the hands that had worn them, the stories they carried, the love they represented. Sophia had wanted these as trophies, status symbols to photograph and display and brag about, but my grandmother had seen them differently. Beauty isn't about possession, she had written in her letter. It's about preservation. I understood now. I arranged for the most historically significant pieces to be loaned to the Chicago Museum of Fine Arts, where they would be displayed in the decorative arts wing with a plaque honoring Beatrice Hartwell's legacy. The rest I would keep safe. One day, if I had children, they would inherit them, along with the stories of where they came from and what they meant. As I was leaving the vault, the bank manager handed me a sealed envelope. "This was in the safe deposit box as well, Miss Vance. We didn't notice it before. Inside was a short handwritten note, my darling Elena. One more thing I didn't tell you. I left Sophia something too. A small pearl bracelet that was my mother's. Simple, not valuable, but meaningful if she could understand its worth. I hope someday she will. Love always, Grandma Beatrice." I stood in the bank lobby and let the tears fall. Even in death, my grandmother had hoped Sophia might change. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I would honor Beatrice's memory the only way I knew how, by being the person she always believed I could be. 6 months have passed since Sophia's wedding. I'm still in San Francisco, still running Lucent Light Studios. Still building the life I created from nothing. The viral video eventually faded, as these things do. My name is no longer trending. The reporters stopped calling. But some things are different now. My mother calls once a week. Awkward, halting conversations at first, neither of us knowing what to say. But slowly, we're learning. She asks about my work. I tell her. She listens. It's a beginning. My father sent a letter, 3 pages handwritten, apologizing for years of blindness. I haven't written back yet. I'm not sure what to say. But I'm thinking about it. Sophia and Julian are in couples therapy. She called me last month, the first time since the wedding. She didn't apologize exactly, but she didn't attack either. She just said, "I'm trying to understand." Maybe that's all she can offer right now. Maybe someday it will be more. I've learned something through all of this. The best response to contempt isn't revenge. It's not proving them wrong or rubbing your success in their faces. It's building something real. It's protecting what matters. It's knowing your worth so deeply that no one's opinion, not even your family's, can shake it. I didn't show up at that wedding to destroy my sister. I showed up to finally be seen. And that gift I left on the table, it wasn't about tearing her down. It was about standing up. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. Some secrets aren't weapons. Sometimes they're truths that just demand to be seen. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved? What did it cost you? What did you gain? Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't showing up. It's knowing when to walk away. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please share it with someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to like this video for the channel Mind Unveiled Stories. We have so many more stories like this waiting for you. Check out the video in the description. I think you'll love it. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of being seen. Goodbye for now.